Thank you for having me. So I want us all to begin with an exercise, okay? If you could put your imagination caps on and imagine we've traveled back in time to the distant past, 2,700 years ago, to be exact. You're on Evia, a Greek island in the heart of the Aegean Sea. It's a warm, still evening. The moon hangs high, casting its pale light over olive groves and the shimmering sea beyond. Atop a small hill, a bonfire crackles, its smoke curling into the moonlit night. You sit among a circle of men, women, and children, listening as an old man weaves a tale about the creation of the world. The glow of the coals lights his weathered face as his voice carries the weight of centuries. And he spins a story as old as time itself. After Prometheus stole the fire of knowledge and civilization from the gods and gifted it to humankind, Zeus, the king of Olympus, vowed revenge. So he summoned Hephaestus, the god of smithing and crafts, and commanded him to create a maiden, molded from earth, shaped by water. They called her Pandora, the first woman of the world. And in her arms she carried a mysterious clay vessel. Zeus sent her to live among the humans, and despite Prometheus's warnings, his brother Epimetheus welcomed her with open arms, along with the mysterious vessel she held in her hands. Well, one day, Pandora's curiosity got the better of her. She couldn't resist. She had to know what lay inside that urn. So, with trembling hands, she pried open that lid, and in an instant, a fierce gust of wind erupted from within. To her horror, out spilled the world's ills. Pestilence, sickness, famine, and death spread across the earth and forever wove themselves into the fabric of the human condition. So we all know the story of Pandora's vessel or Pandora's box or Pandora's urn. It's a story that began with Hesiod, a poet who lived on the island of Evia nearly 3,000 years ago. And at its heart, Pandora's box is an origin story. It's a myth that seeks to explain how the world came to be, as we know it, flawed and fragile, full of both wonder and terror. Across the world, similar stories abound, each rooted in their own soil, their own traditions. Take the ancient Hebrew tale of the temptation of Eve, how she tasted the forbidden fruit and gained the knowledge of good and evil. Or consider the celebrated Ming Dynasty tale of the Monkey King, Sun Wukong, who stole and ate the peaches of immortality and then stormed through heaven's orderly bureaucracy, leaving chaos and laughter in his wake. So to me, it's endlessly fascinating that ancient people from vastly different places and times shared such strikingly similar ideas, each story colored by its own geography and shaped by its own culture. Together, these tales form a constellation of narratives that still guides how we move through the world today. So today I'll share some thoughts on the role of stories in our society, how they shape who we are, and how they profoundly influenced my own journey as a filmmaker and as a photographer. And finally, I'll make the case that it's more important now than ever for our stories to evolve in order to guide us through these interesting times we live in. So, For as long as we've walked this earth, stories have been our constant companions, longer than the wheel, farming hoe, even the domesticated dog. But what is their purpose? And why do these stories hold such power over us? So from what I've learned, stories provide a framework, a way to make sense of the world and of ourselves. They're how we pass down knowledge, share wisdom, and explore the mysteries of existence. But our world, it's not static, is it? Our world is constantly changing. Well, what about our stories? Are they fixed, like words etched in stone? Or should they change with the times too? Who knows who this is? Pablo Picasso. So Pablo Picasso once said of his work, "The world today doesn't make sense, so why should I paint pictures that do?" What does he truly mean by that? So if we're ready, let's keep his words in mind as we go on a journey to search for meaning in this fast-changing world. So this is me, my mom, and my sister in Southern California. Some may recognize, I think that's Newport Beach over there. Growing up, the idea of being a storyteller felt completely out of reach. But I love stories. And most afternoons after school, I'd be at my local library hunting for new and exciting things to read, mostly because my mom couldn't pick me up. She was working, so I had to go to the library after school. And the stories that stuck with me were grand tales of adventure in far-off lands, of people facing impossible odds and rising above them. But to become a storyteller myself, to make films, or shoot for National Geographic, that wasn't my world, or the world my parents knew. So when I went to college at UC San Diego, I did what every clueless 18-year-old did. I picked the major that looked easiest. Well, it turned out to be international studies with focuses on economics and history. And I got really lucky because through those courses, I began to learn to uncover this collective story of us. So inspired by my studies, I moved to China after university. I worked in Shanghai at a law internship at a mergers and acquisitions firm. You know, when you have first-generation Chinese parents, it's not easy, right? But deep down, I knew there was a part of me, I wouldn't even say I was aware of it, that knew I wanted something more than just to make money. I wanted to have a better picture of the place of my heritage and furthermore understand my own story amidst all of this that I was seeing. So soon outside of the walls of my internship, I found an outlet in a very unexpected place. I found myself visiting Shanghai's jazz clubs after work. And soon I found a love in making images of the up-and-coming musicians who came through the city. So for those of you who don't know, and I'm sure a lot of you do, back in the 1920s, during the Republican era of China, Shanghai was known as the Paris of the Orient. And a lot of people from very established jazz backgrounds were going there and stopping over there to play. So that had an interest, a hold on me. And so I began visiting these jazz clubs and taking pictures there. But it's also the first time I was being paid for my images. So in many ways, those nights spent in those clubs taught me what it meant to work and cover a scene photographically. And then the daytime, I'd had to go back to that internship. But eventually that internship concluded, and I knew where I wanted to go next. Xinjiang in Western China, on ancient arteries of the Silk Roads. And I say Silk Roads because it's not a single road, is it? It's many, many, many pathways. So everywhere I went, so did my camera. These were shots that I took when I went to Kashgar and went along the Karakoram Highway back in 2010. The Karakoram Highway is the highest highway in the world, and it travels from China to Pakistan across the Pamirs. And at the time, Xinjiang was still, in many ways, very similar to what it looked like maybe 100 or 200 years ago. But things, like always, change, right?
What year was this?
2010. So I was fulfilling something I only had the courage to imagine as a kid, loitering around my local library. I was venturing into distant lands, meeting people who taught me new ways of seeing, new ways of being. It opened my eyes and it made my heart incredibly full. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. At the time I was preparing my law school apps, I even took my LSATs. And for some reason, there was a voice inside of me that was coaxing me towards another path. I wanted to learn more about stories. I wanted to learn how they worked, how to tell them. And while I knew I could make decent images, I wanted to learn how to infuse them with the stories of the people and the places that had made my travels so meaningful on a personal level. So I decided to take a leap of faith, and I went back to a place that had captured my imagination during my travels. This is Lugu Lake, a home of the Mosuo people, China's last matriarchal society. And this is in western China. So it's nestled between the Hengduan mountain ranges and the Tibetan plateau. And Lugu Lake, as you can see right there, it's in Yunnan province, right on the border of Yunnan and Sichuan province on the Tibetan plateau. It's located in a pristine alpine environment. And it's an area that has long been considered the gateway to Tibet, as well as the fountainhead of China's many mighty rivers. But it was the Mosuo and their traditions that really promised something different for me. Theirs was a way of life almost diametrically opposite to that of contemporary society. And it left a lasting impression on me. The Mosuo are known in popular culture in China as the kingdom of women. And traditionally, as they're a society run by women, there was no such thing as marriages, only walking marriages. And that's a practice in which come nightfall, men from different villages than their lovers would go and walk in the dark to the homes of their lovers, throw the dog a bone, jump over the fence, spend the night, and return home before daybreak. It sounds progressive, right? But of course, when it comes down to it, there's always more than what's on the surface. Like in many traditional societies, public displays of affection among the Mosuo were considered shameful, even hand-holding. And so if you can imagine in a place where it was just that relied on subsistence farming for the most part, the only socially acceptable time anyone could get to know any person of the opposite sex was under the cover of darkness. So I imagine it's kind of like getting a coffee at Starbucks, you know. The Mosuo practiced serial monogamy, not unlike many in our society. But unlike us, if it doesn't work out, there's no messy divorce papers, there's no custody battles, and no splitting of the assets, because the women owned it all. That's how it worked in their society. Mosuo households, this is an image of a Mosuo household, a traditional one. They're multi-generational, with up to 40 people living under one roof. Now, I don't want to give you the impression that they all live under that. It's kind of a traditional courtyard style house in which the matriarch stays in the far end of the courtyard in a home like that, and then her daughters and sons live on the sides of the courtyard, usually on the second story above the pig pen or the livestock pens, so you have to kind of climb up. Children are raised by their mothers, with her brothers standing in as paternal figures. So in Mosuo culture, the uncle is known as the eagle of the family. Lineage and assets were passed down from daughter to daughter instead of son to son. So here, near the roof of the world, these people worked out that a matriarchal as well as a matrilineal society was the best way towards societal cohesion and community harmony. So traditionally, most Mosul women farmed and raised children, and the men worked as tea traders, right? How many of you have heard about pu'er tea? So pu'er tea is from this province in Yunnan. The men, they journeyed a southern tributary of the Silk Roads known as the Chama Gudao, or the Tea Horse Road. And from the steaming jungles of southern Yunnan, they hauled precious bricks of tea worth their weight in gold. So if you've ever seen a pu'er tea cake, the reason it's shaped like that was for transport on the backs of laborers as well as livestock that were bringing them up. And from the snowy lands of the Tibetan Plateau, they brought back the venerated practice of Tibetan Buddhism. So for many hundreds of years, life remained more or less the same, right? But by the early 2000s, something was happening in China. China's economy was experiencing incredible growth. Massive infrastructure projects gave new life to the poorer western provinces and connected them to the powerhouse coastal cities. So in came new roads, new cell phone towers, new airports. Now there's new 5G, right? And in place of Buddhism and tea, the Mosul began to be exposed to the ideas and the technology of the 21st century. Theirs was a society that in many ways represented the change that was reverberating across China as well as much of the developing world. So I wanted to capture this change happening, and I decided I was going to do it through a film. But remember, I was interning at a law firm before this and just taking some photos at a jazz club, right? I'd never done anything like a film in my life. And looking back, I was going purely off of, some would call it charitably youthful determination, and others less charitably would say it's pure naivety, right? But there's an ancient Chinese saying dating back nearly 2,000 years, and I'll say it in Chinese first. It's 出生牛犊不怕虎, which means the newborn calf fears not the tiger, right? But who or what organization was crazy enough to vouch for this newborn calf? So enter National Geographic Society. So I actually just learned from one of the members here, Bob, his friend Rick Ridgway was one of the people who were part of the grant selection committee that approved my grant. And at the time, I was looking for money because I quickly realized that passions can only get you so far and that capital makes the rest of the world go around, right? So I applied for a National Geographic Society grant. And I figured this might be a good opportunity to jumpstart things. Otherwise, I'd be carrying coffee in LA for some producer, right? So did you think I got the grant the first time around?
Yes.
No. I don't think I really knew how to write a grant at the time. But I remember I was like, this is the only way. So I called up the grant officers or emailed and bothered them. And I said, what am I doing wrong? Can you give me some pointers? And they actually sat down with me and said, this is what you could do in the future. And so a whole year later, I reapplied and I got the grant. So yeah, it gave me the seed money as well as the cachet, right, with National Geographic to raise more funds so I could return and document the Mosul. So National Geographic really gave me my first real break, and it helped me they helped me to tell a story about the Mosul, amidst a monumental shift in their lifestyle and culture. I didn't know it at the time, but making the film would have far-reaching effects on how I even saw my own life. So here's a little sneak peek at the film entitled Under One Roof.
那时候过的日子到精神上跟富裕物质方面还是挺缺乏的。
而且他说，你想不想以后等你到老的时候，还是像你妈妈这样子住在火塘边吗？他说哦。然后他的意思是那时候一直鼓励我说你要出去去到外面去看。但是选完之后，我去跟村委会的主任我说提意见，我说求求你了，重新选一次吧。我说我不想做。但是他说这是有史以来的第一个，他说你必须做。
美女们，晚上过来吃烧烤。
我觉得我有那种领导天赋，也不是那种做领导的意思，就说我可以把一拨人给你们贯穿在一起。
再努力再辛苦，只能成功不能失败。
如果服的话，可以说现在都在变了啊，人也变了，地方也变了。我是汉子嘛，就不可能会走婚嘛。他们这就属于很自由的，他又没有说什么结婚呀、离婚呀这样的纠纷。
我觉得为他的这个姑娘要跟着什么去，怎么不放心。但他家妈妈说跟我说你们也是不可能，我都崩溃了，我都不知道怎么。我就是那天我真的哭了，好多我们村里所有的人都说你们都是我们很喜欢。
哇！
我说我跟你们不一样。
哦，才刚来的时候一点都不习惯。那时候有时候啊，思想里面还是好像想放弃了。哎呀，想放弃了，又想到他对我的好，没办法又回来了。哇，现在你看最受苦的就是你了，这笑话我们，嫁在这么远的山里，你已经变成白痴了，你已经感受不到了。我说，但我自己觉得我自己好过就可以了嘛，我自己幸福就可以了。
传说以前这边是没有水的，
有个放牛的哑巴，经常在那里放牛。
有一天，他就看见有个山洞里面有一条鱼的那个尾巴露出来嘛，好大一条。
然后他就割了一块那个鱼肉，烧来吃。然后第二天他再回去那个地方放牛的时候，发现那个鱼身上的那个肉又长好了。
那被村里的地主知道了，
就把整个村的人叫起去把这个鱼给拉出来。
拖出来了，啊，拖出来了就完蛋了。
哇，全部都是汪洋大海。那个时候，那个鱼一拉出来，所有的人都冲下去了。
从此以后，这个湖水就爆发出来，淹没了这个地方。
历程其实5月27号。
准备好了吗？
呀，来，呀。
So while working on my documentary, I had a chance to visit Washington, D.C., where National Geographic's headquarters are. And, it's the first time I ever got a grant, so I felt, I had a responsibility to tell them where the money went. So I presented this work on the Moso and didn't have really any other expectations other than just saying, well, this is where your money went. But actually, to my surprise, or maybe naivety, I was introduced to people from National Geographic Partners, which is the for-profit part of National Geographic, and they asked me if I was interested in taking on other projects. And that's how I began my working relationship with National Geographic. So I, for the last 13 years, specialized in documenting people whose traditional ways of life were on the cusp of rapid change. And my work took me across East and Central Asia, from Altai, Mongolia, where a small minority of Kazakhs have chosen to largely forego the conveniences of modern society in order to maintain a shrinking way of life dating back thousands of years, which is pastoral nomadism. I also went to Kham, Tibet, where young lamas attended time-honored debates on the nature of reality, and then broke for recess to scroll their phones. Right, this is the world we live in. My journey has taken me along ancient arteries of the Silk Roads, where Kyrgyz golden eagle hunters ply their age-old craft and compete for glory against other eagle hunters for the chance to win not just gold, but a new car or even a new apartment at the World Nomad Games, the Olympics of the nomads. So what initially drew me to these stories? What was the common thread? At the time, I wasn't sure, but I began to notice something. Whilst interacting with people from traditional cultures, I detected a certainty to the way people carried themselves. Life often felt simpler there and more meaningful. I saw a groundedness in people who still live by the traditions of their heritage. A connection to something timeless, something deeply rooted. And something curious happened to me along the way as well, besides a haircut. The more I went between my own world and these places of tradition, and the more I traveled, the more restless I became. Returning home after these experiences, I found it harder and harder to settle back into the life waiting for me. I'm sure you felt it too, that jarring shift. Try reading the news on the first day back home from traveling. It hits way differently, right? I had discovered that living between two worlds came with a cost, a price paid in disconnection, in the struggle to belong to either. Why didn't I feel the same when I returned to the modern world and all its conveniences? Someone once said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." Was our society sick? Was I? I really didn't know anymore. But I knew something had to change. Recall, stories are supposed to provide a framework and make sense and help us make sense of what we experience. Maybe somewhere out there was a new story waiting, one that could help me heal, maybe make sense of what I was experiencing. So what did I do? As an avid student of history, I started by going back in time. So in the pre-modern era, stories like Pandora's Box or The Temptation of Eve or even this Mosul story of the giant fish in the cave helped people make sense of their world. And for centuries, these tales did their jobs really well. They explained the mysteries of life, the origins of suffering, the nature of humanity. But times changed. And nothing changed more dramatically than in the 19th century. It was then that something happened that shook the foundations of century-old tradition. The invention of powerful machines and the dawn of the age of industrialization. Suddenly, the world was no longer the same. The old stories, once so comforting, began to feel inadequate, out of step with the rapid pace of progress. Slowly, a new kind of storytelling emerged, one that reflected the complexities of a world transformed by steam and by steel. We entered into the modern age. So from pre-modern to modern, and with it, a new array of stories appeared. Harnessing the power of reason and science, as well as the strength of the individual will. This is new, right? Individual will. We began to tell stories of human triumph. We were empirical, enlightened. We were in control. But just as we believed we had it all figured out, the world shifted again and accelerated into unforeseen changes, leaving us scrambling to keep up. We entered the nuclear age, the space age, the information age, and the age of unparalleled globalization. In just a short span of time, our world became infinitely more complex, more interconnected, and more unpredictable. And did our stories change? You bet. Out are the ancient gods of Olympus. In are Marvel superheroes. I mean, you kind of look at that kind of the framing of it. I mean, as a photographer, that's on purpose, right? Out are the fireside tales. In our multi-season long TV shows, right? Once we used art to celebrate what we valued, like the cave paintings of old. Nowadays, art often challenges our values and sometimes even asks, what even is art? In short, our stories have become as complicated as our lives. We went full post-modern. Yeah, you guys didn't think you're going to get a Simpsons slide tonight, right? No. So what defines postmodern storytelling, and how is it different from what came before? At its heart, postmodern storytelling is a reaction to the world that's become more complex and more fragmented and harder to pin down. It doesn't bind the big sweeping narratives of the neat, absolute truths of the past. Instead, it thrives on ambiguity. It loves a good dose of irony, and it wears skepticism like a badge of honor. I'm just going to leave that slide up there for you to just take it in for a little bit. So where pre-modern stories leaned on myth and tradition, and modern tales celebrated progress and idealism, postmodern stories turn the spotlight back on these frameworks, exposing their flaws, their limits, their contradictions. In essence, postmodern storytelling doesn't just mirror our world, it questions it, it tears it apart, and it often leaves us with more questions than answers, right? Just take these popular examples. First one, we see good guys spiraling into villainy. That's Breaking Bad. We got families tearing themselves apart. That's Succession. And rulers rising through scheming and dysfunction. That's Game of Thrones. These are not tales of happy endings or of pure tragedy, right? They're critical, often very cynical reflections of the world we live in. And they're here to remind us with a wink and a nudge that the darker side of life is always closer than we'd like to believe. But while the darker side of things is a part of reality we can't ignore, are we really just doomed to tell absurd, cynical stories forever? I mean, can we have just one show where the hero decides to open a sourdough bakery or something, you know? Well, I think it's time to introduce the final piece of this storytelling pie. All right, we have pre-modern, we have modern, we got postmodern, and now we have meta-modern storytelling. How many of you have heard of meta-modern storytelling before? Okay, cool. Meta-modern storytelling suggests that the wisdom to navigate our challenges, not necessarily a solution, might already exist in our pre-modern stories. It's not about going back into the past. It's about reimagining it, weaving the threads of tradition into the fabric of our modern world. It's about finding a balance, embracing the chaos of today while holding on to the enduring truths of yesterday. Metamodern storytelling is a recognition of the importance of tradition as a guiding force that lives within us and given to us by our common ancestors. But unlike how prior generations took traditions for granted, we're really now made painfully aware of how precious they can be. In short, metamodern storytelling is the ability to reimagine our future in the context of our past. The writer Ursula Le Guin once said that artists aren't concerned with facts. They're concerned with truth. And for me, storytelling reaches its deepest purpose when it goes beyond simply informing, like the news, to helping us understanding our place in this terrifying, wondrous, beautiful world, and in the equally extraordinary times we live in. To me, this is the type of story I find most compelling in our day and age, and it's the kind of story I'm constantly drawn to. So pre-modern, modern, postmodern, metamodern, okay, at their core, these are just terms, right? They're markers on a journey we must all take to make sense of the world and our place within it. They're steps on an endless path, pieces of a much larger puzzle chronicling our struggles, triumphs, flaws, and joys. And through this story of stories, we tap into a vast wellspring of human wisdom, the collective experiences of countless lives. Speaking of stories, we haven't forgotten about Pandora, have we? Let's check back on her and see how she's doing. Not great. Yeah, so we left Pandora when she just opened the box now, right, because we're in metamodern storytelling, and accidentally let out all manner of sorrows into the world. Depressed for a long time after, it's pretty understandable, right? And then one day, she walked past her bedroom and noticed the box. It was sitting right where she left it. She walked over and picked it up, inspecting it. Ah, the source of all her anguish and her wretchedness. Then, as if to spite the gods, she put her thumb on the latch and cautiously cracked the box open, peering inside. Nothing. Just shadow. Then suddenly, unexpectedly, a glint tickled her eye. Something was hiding in the shadowy corner of the box. Still, she was afraid and couldn't see what it was, for it was dark in her home, so she walked out onto the veranda where the sunlight gave her courage and she opened the box wide. Curiously, something had remained. Hope. In the ancient rendition of Pandora's box or urn or vessel, Zeus intended hope to be the final sorrow, the sorrow of deceptive expectation. Yet in our day and age, I believe we have a choice in the matter. We could choose to see it as deceptive expectation, or we can treasure it as the last and best of all things. Thank you.
What we'll do now is we actually have some questions from the audience, I'm sure. If anybody has any questions or comments they would like to give our speaker, we'll start right over here.
Where are your documentaries shown? Are they feature films or?
Yeah, so it's an hour and 15-minute long film. If you come to me afterwards, I'll get your email and send you a link to it. How's that?
I'm just curious, you were interning as a law intern and shooting some shots in some jazz clubs, and then you go out and shoot a documentary film. Did you have any transition as far as how to shoot, what to shoot, storyboarding your film, any of that, or was this just a whiff of good luck?
It was not smooth sailing, that's for sure. I hear, we talk about our suffering here at the Adventures Club, so I shit my pants more times than I can remember. Up there, literally, figuratively, all of it. And, I learned largely through peers who are also more experienced. I made sure to bring a team that helped fill in my I would say my weaknesses. And so that was very, very helpful. They were my teachers, and I learned tremendously from them. And at the same time, we made a ton of mistakes, and it spent 2 years of my life doing this. So yeah, it is a journey I can go into depth and detail about on a one-on-one basis with you guys afterwards.
Amazing presentation. One of my favorites at this club thus far. My question to you is, was there ever a place or region that you ventured to that you regretted or that you felt that maybe it wasn't the best choice going there?
No.
As we walk right another hand up here, I'm curious, did you always have the cooperation of the people you were shooting? They were willing to be shot, or was there a situation where they did not want to be recorded?
The people that did not want to be recorded didn't make it into the film. And that's true. I respected what people wanted. I will tell you this. When I first started, this was kind of the time when social media was taking off, and it was both a good and a bad thing, because you were seeing what other people were doing real time, right? And you were learning, and I was saying, oh my gosh, look at these people. They're doing great work, this and that. And I guess when you start off in your career, at least for me, I had an anxiety of I need to figure out how to make this thing good. That oftentimes comes at the expense of treating people as an ends rather than as a means. And I quickly learned that it's best practice to kind of just put your camera down, put your pen down, and just be with people. Just be with people and let your mind be molded by the place and by the people. And that anxiety will go away, and you will know what to shoot and what to say, because you will hear it from them. And that's something that I learned from that experience that I take with me to this day, and I try to implement that as best as I can. Yeah.
First off, thank you. You have incredibly profound images, and I really love seeing your point of view. From the point that you did the documentary, would you say it was 2010? That you did with the Mosa?
No.
Oh, okay.
2010 was when I was finishing up my internship. So between then and the Mosa, I was doing my documentary between 2015 and Yeah, 2015 to 2017. Yeah.
And have you been back since, or do you know what's happened to that group of people in that area with the political climate going on and the changes?
So I will definitely say that I keep in contact with them via this little handy app called WeChat. It's the Chinese WhatsApp, and everybody has it, and we stay updated that way. I have not been back since for a few years, and that's actually something that's top of mind right now. I would like to go back and just visit my friends. I would say, given one of the things that I would like to point out is that oftentimes, due to media, the way the media construes China, it's oftentimes very political. But I would say it's actually just more of an economic pressures that people face there rather than as much, I would say, overt political pressure that, let's say, the Mosul would face. For them, the pressure is literally like, last time I go back, the kids are like singing Justin Bieber songs. Or, the ladies that, essentially the matriarchs who did not work anymore in the fields, they would row people to the center of the lake to watch the sunrise. And these are young tourists who are white-collar workers living in the city who probably never seen a sunrise in such a place, right? And it's very moving for them. And so actually in the trailer, you see that they're singing songs because they're so excited. And the women, they kind of, these matriarchs, they kind of band together and they're counting their cash at the end of the morning, when the sun's already risen and the tourists have gone off and done their thing. And one thing that I asked one of the matriarchs was like, what do you do with all this cash, And they're like, we go travel, duh. Right? So they got on a plane, they flew to Lhasa, they had their pilgrimage there. And so I like to see it as kind of, it's not a single-edged sword, it's a double-edged sword, right? There's positive and negative outcomes, just like everything in our lives.
In the decade or so of your documentary work, have you always taken a purely sort of outsider perspective in terms of recording, but not trying to sort of take a side or change? Or has that ever shifted into more of an activist kind of approach where you've seen things that you felt like either needed to be sort of redirected or changed, or you felt like maybe you wanted to change?
I think that's a really good question. When I first started, I think I had more of an activist approach because that is the very Western approach we're taught at school. But something I learned very quickly was that nothing is black and white in these places. That development is a double-edged sword. We travel to these places because we've lost something that they have, right? These people want something that we have. And so in a lot of ways, the longer I do this, the less I try to judge. The less, like if you came with like somebody from ExxonMobil or BP, I would want to learn what they're about before I say, hey, you're a terrible person or you're a bad person, because it's just never, to me, I feel like it's never so black and white, because if it was, then things would be solved already.
Out of all the stories you've seen, heard, and read, do you have any, what's your least favorite story out of all of them? For anyone?
What's my least favorite story? The news. I hate it, but I doom scroll, But it's informative, but it doesn't do anything for me, but just make me anxious. It's just the newest trash can bonfire of the day, So that's probably my least favorite, because it supposedly informs us, but we just become anxious and lose sight of the big picture.
I'd like to see if you could elaborate on that concept you just spoke about, that we go there to find something that we're missing, but they want something that we have.
Yeah.
Because I'm about ready to go work with a group of people overseas, and there's a connection I feel to some people because they just hustle, and I respect that.
Yeah.
What do you find that they want from us other than our cash?
I don't know. I think that's very hard because each individual wants something different. But when they see us, they probably only see the highlight reel, right? They see the cool outdoor clothes. They see the living in the city, swishing the wine, like that type of soap opera stuff. And that leaves a lasting impact on a lot of people who are from villages or more rural areas. And they would like that city life. They would like a marriage in which the woman wears a beautiful white wedding gown and gets walked down the aisle. Like, those are things that we might take for granted, but to them, it's absolutely exotic.
I mean, because what you're alluding to is that, the hit parade of what they see of us. Sometimes I wonder, what if we went beyond the hit parade of them and saw, like, their struggles and their sorrows and their tragedy? How are they when they get really old and they can barely walk and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's unforgiving. That's what I'll say. It's not. Oftentimes we'll go for like a camel ride in Morocco or something, or we'll go enjoy ourselves, and we don't see beyond the surface of that so-called hit rate, right? But for example, I was in Morocco and I was talking to one of the young Berber men who was leading camels around, and he was just like, yeah, I've done a lot of things. I've taken photographs. I've done a lot of things in tourism industry, but I did this because all of our goats died during a particularly hot summer, and that was the family resources. That was the money. And so I had to go in the city. I had to go to Casablanca and Fez and find work. And then I started working in the tourism industry. And now he leads people by camelback through some dunes. So it's really fascinating, right? Like you see that there is an engine underneath all of this, right?
Yeah, okay, one more.
One more question.
First question: had you seen the documentary Love and War?
No, I haven't seen it. The new one
yes.
on Lindsay Addario,
yes,
right?
exactly, yeah.
I've seen trailers for it, but I haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
I think it'll really hit home.
Okay.
And which leads me to my question. For those of you, it's a great documentary. It's a true story about Lindsay, a famous war photographer, and her struggle between being on the road and doing what her passion is in her life, and raising a family and having a family, and it's just the challenges along the way. So with that in mind, you pointed out that it has some drawbacks to doing this passion of yours, and did you experience that, or can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a 3-year-old, and I have a very loving wife. We've been together for almost 20 years, and she's very understanding of this, but a 3-year-old shouldn't understand this, shouldn't be expected to understand this. And I was just away for about a month. I just came back about 5 days ago, and I could tell that she was extra clingy to me. She really wanted to spend more time with me, and yeah, there's a sense of guilt there, but it's also a sense of making me realize, and I don't think this is a one-for-one type of thing, but when I am home, I try to be as present as possible and put the phone down. No scrolling in front of the kid, nothing. We just spend time, as much quality time with each other as possible. And so that to me is very important. And when she gets old enough, I hope to take my family with me. I mean, because I've seen too many of my colleagues and friends just lose their families to this. So, yeah, I'm always in search of balance. Yeah.
Talking about balance, thank you very much for a fantastic presentation tonight.